This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it's time for another episode of Avoid the Maze. And Avoid the Maze is a journey through our life. And we started this about 6 months ago because I started thinking about my own journey and who I thought I was at the age of 5 and 15 and 30 and 50. And you know what? I think I'm probably very much like all of you and like our guest, ReGina Smithwick, because our journey is constantly changing. And it changes even from the moment of conception. So today, Regina's going to take us on her journey. She's written a book about it as well. So I'm going to tell you that's going to be in the show notes. And if you want to know more about her after today, absolutely go get the book and read all about ReGina. So
Yes.
welcome. How are you
Thank
today?
you. Thank you so much for having me up here today. I'm honored and blessed to be on your show. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. So you wrote this book about your
Mhm.
journey.
Yes.
When did you decide that, hey, there's something about what I've been living through that needs
Mhm.
to get on paper?
It's actually, it was a kind of a fluke because I never tried to be an author. I never was a writer. I never was crazy about writing. That was not my forte. I'm more of a talker, hands-on visionary kind of person. So the book stemmed from when I actually went through the process of finding out why I was doing things in life, like your example you gave, in all the years you do things. And I actually had a breakdown in 2019. And in during my breakdown and getting recovery and getting help, and I went to a spiritual life coach, I found out that the problem lied in my adoption.
Interesting.
So, right. So I had abandonment issues, I had low self-esteem, I had validation issues. And when all that stemmed and bubbled up to the surface, it all stemmed from me hiding my adoption. I didn't tell nobody. So when I didn't tell nobody, I was telling myself that I didn't love myself by hiding who I was. So it was kind of like when you said your intro, it makes so much sense. I relate. So the book came from one of my new cousins that I found in a journey, and she couldn't believe how everything fell in place and how my journey. She never heard anything like this before. She said, "You need to write a book because the way you found your family in one day is incredible, and you need to write a book about it." And I was like, I'm not a writer. That's not my thing. After I kind of stepped out of myself and kind of like took myself out the equation, I realized it's not about me. The book is supposed to help somebody. So when I took my ego out the way, I went ahead and said, okay, let me just try to do this writing thing. And it ended up like I always say, I feel that God has kind of put it on me, and everything I feel that he puts on you, he makes it easily and effortlessly when it's supposed to be done.
You're right.
So it ended up working out just like that. I found the right editor, the person that did my book. She was wonderful. She was very patient. She walked me through the process. And 3 months later, a book came.
3 months.
It took me
Wow.
3 months from beginning to the end to finish the book.
And I think I heard you say that you found your family in one day.
One day after I did the ancestry kit, I went to Amazon. And it was put on me. Actually, one of my friends, he was telling me right around the holiday time, right before the new year, that he was on there, and a sister he never knew found him and was like, I think we siblings, And when that happened, I said, you know what? I think it's time for me to stand in my truth. And I feel that God kind of talked to him to talk to me to kind of say, okay, let me help you out here. So I ordered a kit from Amazon, and I got it, did the little thing, sent it off. 6 weeks later, it says, here's your results. And I found two cousins on there that looked like me. They look just like me. I emailed them and I told them who I was, and I told them my mother's name, and they were like, yep, that's my cousin.
How incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a step back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how old were you when you were adopted? Was it right at birth? Did you
I was
have a connection?
technically 3 days old.
Okay.
I actually had spent 3 days with my birth mother. I was born in Harlem, in New York, and the adoption agency was in Westchester County, probably 20, 30 minutes up the road. And I was able to spend time with her, and then they came and got me and took me to the agency for a couple more days for my parents to do the paperwork. And then I went home with them.
So, you know, I've watched lots of movies about adoption. I have a niece and nephew who are adopted.
Mhm.
You know, we think we understand it. Okay. As a family member, I was excited. I'm getting a new niece. Okay. And then a couple
Right.
years later, I'm getting a new nephew. And the interesting part is that my niece resembled my mother and my mother's mother to a T. I
Mm.
mean, she could have been my mother's daughter more than me. Okay. And
Wow.
my nephew was very much like my mother's brother. And so as they were growing up, they were my niece, my nephew, their family. Okay.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Um, Never thought about them necessarily as being adopted. Did they want
Mm-hmm.
to know where they came from or anything like that?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm finding that more and more people who have been adopted are
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, I need to know where I came from. Where I
Mm-hmm.
am may be good, but
Mm-hmm.
something is missing.
There you go. You hit it. You hit it right on the head, because we could break this down a little bit. So with the find out who you are, when you don't know about being adopted, most adopted parents, and I'm a little different because I actually adopted my daughter. So I was adopted and I'm adoptee and adopter. So that's rare.
Okay.
But a lot of parents who adopt, they're not adopted people. So it's kind of like you don't understand what that void is that you just mentioned. The void has nothing to do with the upbringing of the child in your home. You could be the greatest parents ever. It has nothing to do with you. And what happens is a lot of the adopted parents take it personally, thinking that, oh, if you go find them, you're gonna leave us, or you find your mother, you're not gonna want to be with us no more. And it's two different entities. It has nothing to do with each other. Nothing. A lot of adopted children are scared to talk because lately now it's more in the mainstream, but people who are my age, I was born in 70, and like the older generation, we kind of, the parents kind of hushed it. They didn't really
Right.
talk about it. They didn't talk about it because they didn't want any kind of awkward thing for you. And they didn't want to feel like they were less than parents for them. So they kind of just kept it quiet. They didn't typically hide it, but they didn't tell it. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So today is a little different, but for that reason, that's why I'm talking about it, because we need to talk about adoption, and we need to let the adopted children know they have the right to find out where they're from. They have the birthright, just like you had the birthright to know who your parents are.
Sure.
Don't take that away from them out of your insecurities. You need to work on that. But you don't need to step in the way of a child trying to find out where they're from, their mannerisms. Like, for example, my adopted father, nobody never thought, because I look like him. And what I found out going through this journey, I've been talking to a lot of adopted children. Back in the days when we got adopted, a lot of them, they try to match you up to a parent that looks similar. Like they try to find people that look similar to the child's parents,
Okay.
kind of, so you kind of feel like you're part of the family. Because a couple of my friends had told me that when they was adopted, their mothers and their birth mothers look similar, or they have similar characteristics. And I think they tried to make you look
Sure.
similar. And it's kind of like, you never thought, I was like, that makes sense. But my dad, he said, you feed somebody long enough, they start looking like you anyway. Because people never thought in a million years that I was adopted. They thought I looked like my father. So telling everything you're just saying is amazingly
Yep.
true. And I really believe that we need to just open these doors up. I know people that actually are sitting there waiting for their adopted parents to die before they go find their birth family, because they feel like they're not honoring, because they didn't give them the permission to feel open enough to talk and be transparent. even though they didn't say nothing, but sometimes saying nothing is just as worse as saying, I don't want you to do it. They don't know how to come at you and talk to you. They don't know what to say because they feel, if I come to you one day out of the blue and say, hey, I love you, but I want to go find my other parents. That sounds like you're not being, you being disrespectful, or you're not being appreciative of us. And it does sound like that, but it's not like that. We got to open these doors of communication with our adopted parents and adoptees. I feel that the system needs to do more training for the parents who adopt, to have them ready for that conversation to say, hey, I was 7 years old when I found out. I found literally one of my sorority sisters just found out she was adopted this year. She's 40 something years old, and she only found out because of paperwork that they found after the parents passed away.
How sad.
That's the only way. Right. Yeah. She didn't know anything. She called me up. She said, you would not believe this. I just found out I was adopted by paperwork that we wasn't even looking for. We were looking for something else, and we ended up running into this. So and she came on my show. We all talked about it, and it was so liberating. And now it just changed her life, because you thought you was something for 40 years. And you just wake up the next morning and you got a whole nother name.
And you have your genes now are different. Your genes are different. Yesterday you were part of this pod, but now you're really part of this pod, but you've sort of enjoyed being part of the other one all this time. And
right. You get confused.
And I can't imagine what it does to anyone learning about adoption in a way that it's not really being shared as information and knowledge, so that it's done in a loving way. So I'm assuming when you found out when you were 7, your parents sat you down and talked to you, and you already knew that they loved you. You were already in a happy home. And so, hopefully they told you in such a way that was like, oh, well, that's great. I love you. But I can't imagine your friend in her 40s, just all of a sudden now her life is uprooted.
Right. And, and that's the thing, is we all have different stories, but we all have similarities when it comes to our adoption. The show I did for my podcast, I had 3, it was me and 2 other ladies. We all have abandonment issues. We all have validation issues. We all been divorced. We all had relationship issues with friends, people pleasing. There's a lot of things that we internally didn't realize that we had in common, and it links together. So even though she found out later and I found out at 7, and the other lady found out around 4, my mother gave me permission she asked me to go find them way before I did. I didn't stand in my truth. I couldn't stand in my truth. And that was the reason why I didn't do it as soon as I didn't do it until I was 50 years old, because I was too concerned worried about how other people would think about me, instead of me not seeing that and realize who I am. There's nothing wrong with this. This decision was not my doing. I was not any part of this decision of me being adopted. It was my birth parents and my adopted parents who did the transaction. I had nothing to do with this. So why am I taking it on like it's something bad? Because I always worry about how people feel and thought about me. And when I went and got my help and realized that I am enough, I'm beautiful, I'm enough, I'm able to do anything I want to do. And when I got that in my DNA and realized that I'm a queen, my name is ReGina, and it actually means queen. And I needed to tilt my crown and act like a queen needs to act and do this stuff. That's why I exploded over like the last year and a half and ended up doing like all these books and shows and podcasts and a motivational speaker. I never thought, because I stand in my own way because I didn't feel confident enough, because I was hiding from myself by not saying I am adopted. Those 3 words had changed my life when I said it out loud. I actually had a birthday party on a Zoom because, we all been COVID for a couple of years. And my best friend, she knew. We made a little, we had my pictures of my siblings, my dad was on there, and people kept us looking like, who's this guy? Like, I don't know who this guy is on this Zoom, you know? So we said it, you know, and I did a little speech and I said, I just want to let you know that I'm adopted. I mean, literally everybody screamed, people started crying because it was like, well, why you never say nothing to me? I said, because it got nothing to do with you.
That's right.
It's not, it had nothing to do with you. You're taking it personally. I had to face me first. But now I realize that fear is nothing but fear itself. And when you face it, it turns so small and it's minute and nobody really cares. I made this whole thing up since I was 7. So I carried a 7-year-old decision till I was 50 years old and made it so bigger than life. I suffered myself for like not being this person I am today, because I was so concerned because I didn't want nobody to use nothing against me, because kids are cruel.
Kids are cruel. And, you know, even adults are cruel. And I'm hoping that the adults who are listening to this podcast can look themselves in the mirror and identify, because we have certain perceptions of people and we make choices without the information. I've been watching, and I don't know if you watched this on TV. It's in its last year. It's called This Is Us.
Oh my God.
Yeah, of course you watch
it. Yes.
And you know, watching it, the Black gentleman who's adopted by a white family, he was happy as a kid, but he had problems. When you see those flashback scenes, we can identify.
Last year, they really got into it last year.
Yeah, there's really something going on there. But he was taken in love, treated with love. But here he is now an adult, and he's having a real hard time really understanding where he fits in. And, you know, some of us try to be so altruistic and we say, oh, I can adopt anybody. You know, I love children. They're going to be, you know, just like my natural children. Maybe, maybe not. Because as I said in the beginning, all of our journeys change. And when you get those influences from around you, and the influences are bad, because the most of us, we don't understand. We don't get it. I've never been adopted. I don't have an adopted child. How can I understand what your mother went through, what your birth mother went through, and what you're going through? And now you have an adopted child. So did you choose to adopt because you just believe that this child needed you? Or
well, it was my husband's daughter. I adopted. Her mother wasn't in her life when she was younger, and I felt, and let me tell you the secret was, I didn't even tell my husband I was adopted.
Interesting.
He didn't know. I didn't tell anyone. Only ones knew was my internal family, and they never talked about it. And I was the first one, but there's about 7 of us in my family who's been adopted. My mother and her sisters, a lot of them adopted children. So it was known we was adopted, but we never talked about it or anything. But yes, my husband at the time did not know I was adopted. So I had this feeling, because I knew my story, and I knew that I don't believe in steps and all this stuff. I was like, look, she's my child. Like, you know, a mother's not in her life. I want to go ahead and adopt her. And it was very important to me. And they, you know, of course, people didn't know why, because they didn't know, but I knew why. Because I knew that was important for her to feel like she's a part of a family, that she's not just in limbo, because I ended up having twin boys. And they, at the time, was my only line of blood. It was them 2. So I didn't want her to feel like, okay, I had these boys, but then you're just, you know, his daughter, and you're my stepdaughter. Like, we don't do that here. So let's go ahead and get you adopted, and we all are family. So that was very important to me to do that. And the This Is Us, that's a whole nother layer, because you have interracial adoption. And what we just discussed was just proven. She hid so much from him because she was so worried on top of her just being adopted, but just because of being another race.
Right.
And if he goes to back to his race or the family, what's going to happen? Is he going to leave me? And she was so scared of that. She did not want him a part of that life. And then she, apologized in the last episode about holding all that, because that messed his mental completely up, And I learned from it when he went to that therapy session about interracial adoption. It's like another layer on top of mine. Just being raised, it doesn't even matter what race it is, but even a culture, being raised in a different culture and you not knowing where you're from culturally on top of the parents.
Exactly.
That blew my mind. And I couldn't imagine.
And like I said, there can be a tremendous amount of love and support, but it is going to change how outsiders look at it, and even how you look outside of yourself.
And even the brother,
Yep.
The brother, they had issue because he was kind of like doing racist stuff, but not realizing it. But he was trying to fit in. That was his way of trying to make him comfortable. So they were kind of going back and forth. So yes, adoption is a lot. It's a lot of layers. It's very layered, and it's not cookie cutter. I always tell people, you watch these movies on TV and everybody, oh, I found my mom and dad and sister. And everybody hugs, and then the credits come down the screen. And everybody goes, oh, they happy. I'm like, well, that's part one. Now the people they hug, and they got to go learn who they are. That's a whole nother ball of wax.
Absolutely.
It's just like you meeting your mom for the first time at 50 years old. And you go, hi, my name is ReGina, and I'm your daughter. You instantly feel like you love them because you feel like you have no choice because these people brought you in the world, but I don't know them. So I had to learn personalities. Me and my dad, we talk on a regular basis. My birth mom passed away. I didn't get a chance to meet her. She passed away in 2007, so I didn't get a chance to meet her. But my birth dad, he calls me every day. We have relations, and we have like these deep talks, like because we had to learn each other, like our past and the things that we did, and it takes time. It takes time.
Absolutely.
And with my siblings, it takes time. We all different people. So some of my siblings, just like anybody in the world, some of us, we connect like this because we have similarities, and some of us, we love each other, but we don't talk as much, but we still have a bond. I had to learn that because I was born as only child. I didn't have no other siblings. So now I went from an only child to 6 siblings in one day.
Wow. In one day.
So it's been, a thing with me, lucky enough that, all of them are beautiful people and they're all good people. I'm grateful for that. I'm happy for that because, it could have been totally different. I was blessed that they were open for me to come in, because there are some situations that some parents are not open. You try to find them and they reject you because they have issues.
Well, you mentioned that your mom encouraged you. My sister-in-law encouraged both her daughter and her son to look for their birth parents.
Very good.
Her son has had no desire, but her daughter did. And so she did the same thing. She did the swab. And when she got her results back, she said she was afraid to open it up because she knew that her life was going to change. But it was important to her because she had been diagnosed with MS, and she wanted to really know her biological background. She said that was extremely important to her. And she said she didn't want to be rejected, but if she were, she would deal with it. But initially it was, I have to figure out what's going on here. Now she's been very lucky. She found her birth father. She found her birth mother. She has siblings, and everybody gets along. It sounds very much like what you're talking about. Some are closer than others, but she didn't abandon us either. And that was the interesting part, because at the time, my mother was in her mid 90s, and my mother was like, why does she have to do this? And I said, she has to. She loves you. She loves you. That's not going to change. But
Mhm.
something in her life is missing. And the way I
Mhm.
tried to share it with my mother, I said,
Mhm.
my grandparents immigrated here from Russia,
Mhm.
leaving their families behind. I
Mhm.
said, so when your mother and father came to America, they were
Mhm.
young, they had babies, they never saw their family again. I
Mm.
said, that had to be very tough for them. They didn't
Mhm.
speak the language. They had to learn to speak the language. Everything changed. I
Mhm.
said, but they still knew they had somebody somewhere else. But it's not
Mhm.
like today where you can send an email or do a FaceTime phone call. And
Mhm.
that's when my mother said, oh, you know what? I hope they love her as much as we do. And
Mm.
that to me was
Mm.
so wonderful because at 95, she could have been set in her ways and I would have understood it.
Right.
But here
Exactly.
she was, it was like, you know what? Yes, she should get to know them. And she has, and it's terrific. And yet I know others that haven't had that lucky of an outcome. And I'm sure you've
Mhm.
talked to a few as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's funny you said about your nephew because the boys in our family are if I know that usually they don't. I don't know if it's because the way they makeup is emotionally wise, like, maybe it's too much because a son and a daughter, I mean a son and a mother kind of thing. I don't know if it got I don't know that yet, but it seemed like to me a lot of males are more accepted to say, no, I'll just leave it as it is. I'm good. I know what I know. I don't need to know that they don't want to open up that. There's a lot of emotion with it. It's a lot of emotion and you have to be ready for it. So I do understand and respect him. I always say, to our adopted tribe, if you don't do anything else but find at least your medical out of it, at least your medical. If you don't want a relationship with them, hey, fine, that's your option. But at least know enough that you know what's going on with you. Because like I had to find out because like I had some colon issues this year. Come to find out, I asked my sister, I said, anybody in the family got colon issues? Like, oh yeah, granddad, he had issues with his colon, he had like, and I said, see, if I didn't know these people, I wouldn't have known this.
Right.
I'm just going shooting at the dartboard on my health because I don't know at least where stuff is stemming from. So I always tell people, look, if you don't want to know anything else, at least know them enough to say, can I just know my medical information? Because I just want to know if there's anything I need to watch out for or ask the doctor to look into early.
Well, and
That's at least,
absolutely.
and that's saving your life. It's not even about nobody, it's saving your life. Because you
Well,
said MS, that's a big thing. And did she find out exactly where it's traced from?
so she has traced some of the medical stuff, the MS itself, not necessarily, but
Mhm.
um, it's interesting because we still, tease her that her personality is still more like my mother, not even like, you know, her
Mhm.
her birth mother or
Mhm.
her adoptive mother. She's more like my mom. And we laugh because she always said that her grandmother was so stubborn. And I said, well, you guess what? You must have spent enough time with her to pick it up.
Well, we
But
pick up a lot of traits from people. I mean, it's I wish that I had more studies. I wish they did more studies on this because this is very interesting because when you live with people all your life, you're gonna pick up some of their traits.
oh,
Because I
absolutely.
picked my mother and father, I have both of them in me. But it's funny, I never met my mother and I look just like her. I walk like her from what I've been told. I've been told I sound like her. I have a mouth like her. We both got these slick little mouths. And they like, and my sister one time was looking at me, she's like, you just like mommy. You just like mommy. And my nieces and nephews, they cried when they saw me the first time, like literally cried. Cause they were like, you look just like grandma. You look just like grandma. And it's like amazing how much I look like someone and act like someone and never met them. It's just amazing how that
It is
works.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And this was also an important journey for you because you said you have twin boys.
Mhm.
They have your bloodline. Now they
Yes,
can
they do.
understand more about that bloodline. Whereas if you hadn't found your family,
Mhm.
it would have been starting with you where their bloodline was because they wouldn't
And
have been able to have all that information.
and
But
yeah,
how
it's
old were
true.
they when you adopted your daughter?
Oh, they younger. So I adopted my daughter, they 9 years apart. So I adopted
Okay.
my daughter when she was 6 or 7, because before they were born. It
Okay.
was before they were
Okay.
born. Yeah. So, but like you said, it's just amazing how everything that's falls into line. I kind of was so selfish, and I thought about that too. Making that decision not to find, or not to stand in my truth would rob my boys from their history, because my father and he looks they look just alike. I had a picture of all three of them together. They all look just alike, and they got uncles and aunts, and they need to know that. So I'm so glad. And like my daughter, she knows her birth family, because they wasn't too far removed. We knew who
Sure.
they were, but she has a relationship with her sisters and her mother and her grandmother. And I understood it, and I never felt threatened because I got her. I get it. You want to know where you come from. She looks just like her birth mother, just like her, same size and everything, looks just like her. And it's good. I know it looks good for her to see someone that looks like her.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, we don't come into this world alone. Somebody brings us into this world.
Mm-hmm.
We may never get to know them, as in your
Mm-hmm.
case. You didn't
Mm-hmm.
get to know your mother, but you
Mm-hmm.
are getting to know her through your siblings, through your
Mm-hmm.
birth father, through
Yes.
other relatives. And, you know, that can be bittersweet, but at least you're getting to know her and
Yes.
being told and being able to see that you have her characteristics. Um, that has to make you feel very, very good. You
It
know,
does.
we all we all make choices in our life. Um, and sometimes they're not our choices, they're the choices of the people around us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a college roommate who got pregnant her sophomore year in college. She came from a very strict Catholic family. It
Mm-hmm.
was an interracial child.
Mm-hmm.
Her aunts, who were all nuns, told her she
Oh
had to
wow.
give the child up for adoption. She did. Um, it
Wow.
was it was a terrible scene. It was horrible because she and her boyfriend truly, truly were in love, and they eventually
Oh.
got married. Um, and I just learned in the last 5-10 years that their birth child did find them.
Yay.
They do have a relationship. They
Yes.
never had any more children because her
Uh,
family didn't like the interracial aspect. And she
mm-hmm.
said, she just couldn't do that to them again. And my message to people is that it's not what you're doing to somebody else.
That's right.
It's got to be what is good for you. And if that
Mm-hmm.
worked for them, God bless them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to learn over the years. I was always trying to make everybody else happy, saying the right things at the right time. Yep. And then all of a sudden I woke up one morning and I said, whoa, I'm not a real happy person.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else around me is. So
Mm-hmm.
what do I do to change that? And what I had to do was dig deep inside myself and say, what makes me happy?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a little kid, I was the third child in line, two older brothers. And when my brothers picked on me, I always went to my mother and said, I know I'm adopted. I have no idea why I said it, but I said it
Mm-hmm.
from probably a foot tall until really
Mm-hmm.
into my teens. And my
Mm-hmm.
mother one day finally said to me, I want you to stop that because even if you were, I love you with my whole heart. And that's when I
Mm.
realized, wow, that's all it's about. It's about
Yes, it
love,
is.
but
But
there's still things missing.
what you just said is one of the reasons why I didn't say what I didn't say it. Because especially in the 60s and 70s and 80s, like that was a whole nother era there. Now people are more conscious on the words they use on certain topics and stuff. But back then it wasn't like that. And that word adoption was a bad word because you feel isolated. Our society, like when you're adopted, you're not part of. When you're adopted, you are different than. So that word was used in a bad terminology back then. And that's what the fear was. And that's why the hush hush was going on, because people didn't like that. And you as a child didn't know. You knew adoption means different, but you didn't know all the deepness of it. You just knew what you knew because everybody was using, it'll call it redhead stepchild or the
Right.
adoption, or, you know, you must be the black sheep, and anything to isolate that those words. You heard that a lot growing up. Black sheep, stephead, red child, in adoption was very popular terms back in the days because they wanted to show you that something, you crazy, you must be, you different. You know, instead of taking it and saying, well, that person is just different, or embrace their differences, you take it and say, well, if you're not following the rules like everybody else, you got a problem. Maybe y'all have the problem. And I'm the one that's living my life. You ever thought of that way? Just like you said about your friend living a life for someone else, you know, and you were truly in love. You married the person. It wasn't like no little college thing,
Right.
you know? And I know when you're a child though, and I put my birth mother in the same, she was 20 years old when she had me, but she still had two other kids because I was the youngest child. So she's been a mother for a while. She's been a mother for 4 years already. So she
Wow.
knows being a mother. So imagine you already being a mother and have to make this decision that, you know, she didn't have the money. She barely was making it. She knew she had to go back to school. She didn't finish high school, so she was trying to go back to school. It was so much going on with her at that moment, and she had to make that decision when you already have two kids at the house that you were gonna go to a hospital, stay there, and leave out of there with no other child, and go back home to the other two kids like nothing happened. That's
Can't
the
imagine.
mental, and after the years, like after the family figured me out because they didn't know nothing about me because she had me in New York. She went back to Virginia where she's from after the fact. So she came home with the two kids. She came left, so they didn't know me. They didn't know there was even inkling I was around. So when I came around, they were just like, well, wait a minute, how did that happen? And then we start piecing stuff together and figuring out, she's like, oh, that's why she was so into the grandkids. And that's why because we kind of figured out, you make decisions that you're young and you, like you said, you evolve and you grow. And when she got older, she of course wish she didn't did what she did at 20 years old. And that, I guarantee, that messed with her mental state. I guarantee you, my birthday every year, I guarantee she remembered. She, it kept her, Christmases and holidays. I know that, and I wish I could, my dream was to meet her and just to say, thank you. That's all. Thank you for not being selfish. Thank you for being unconditionally loving me, because you could just went to a clinic and got rid of me. You didn't have to carry me for 9 months and take care of me, make sure you ate well, go into a doctor. You didn't have to do none of that. You just went to a clinic and been done in less than 4 hours and been home and been done with the whole thing. I love you for not just thinking about you. You thought about me. You gave me a chance to live. That was so important to me. And I said, I pray and I always talk to her, and I know she knows. And I know she's happy that her children are together now. I know she's happy that her family's together now. So I tell her, Mom, thank you so much, because without you, I wouldn't be here. Giving up a child, and that's another terminology that people use. It's placing a child in another family. I had to learn that. Somebody taught me that. You're not giving, they didn't give you away. You got placed in another family. For her to do that shows me how her heart is. We think of it as being bad sometimes. You go, okay, oh, she gave you away and she didn't love you and they couldn't take care of you and this and that. No, she didn't go to an abortion clinic. That's what I'm talking about. She didn't go to an abortion clinic. That alone. And then she had to wake up every morning for 9 months with the decision she had to make every day, knowing she's going to give me away and do it again the next day. That is a mental, it messes with your head.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
It has to. It has to. So I know she went through a lot to do what she did for me, and I don't take it for granted. And that's why I decided to wear my crown and finally live my life and do everything that I'm doing, because I'm doing it for her, because she did not do that for me to live the life I was living. She did not.
So you're sharing this in a podcast and you've shared it in a book. So let's first tell our listeners, how can they find the book?
Okay, my book title is Adoption, The Unknown Blessing. It's on Amazon. And I did a couple of journals that I actually worked on because I wanted people to have somewhere to go to write down these things that we go through. And it's called Wring Out Your Sponge is the name of my book. To wring out all the insecurities, validation issues, get it all out. Because you cannot soak nothing in until you get rid of all that. And now you'll be able to receive and absorb when you wring out your sponge. So I do have a book for that, and that's on Amazon as well.
And how can they find your podcast?
Podcast is on Let's Talk 1943. So it's Let's Talk 1943. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook Live bi-monthly. But you can find all the episodes on YouTube under Let's Talk 1943. And then my website is www.letstalk1943.com. It's all the same.
So why 1943?
Oh, that is because of my father that raised me. My dad, his name is Hildred Frankel Smithwick. And he passed away in 2012. Actually, this is the 10th year. Yep. This year will be 10 years he's been gone. I wanted to dedicate the show to him because he's my everything. My daddy, he's my everything. And I wanted to just show homage to him. So that was the year he was born, 1943.
I love that. You know, it's such a blessing that not only did you find your birth family, but you have such a strong connection to the family who brought you home with them. And, you know, when I think of that, it takes special people to bring a child into their home and make that child part of them.
It does.
You know, I have to share a real quick story. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, my parents were thinking about bringing in a foster child. They felt I needed a sister. And they sat my brothers down and me, and they told us, and I was a little brat. I was 9 years old, and it was like I was queen of the house, okay? And I said, you are not bringing any other little girls into this house. And my brothers got mad at me, and they said, why not? That's a very nice thing that mom and dad want to do. I don't know where that jealousy came from. I've never had it any other time in my life. And I remember just crying and crying. And my parents they didn't do it because the agency they were going to go through said, if you can't get her under control, you cannot bring another child. And when I was graduating high school, I remember I apologized to my parents. I said, I don't know why I did it. I have felt remorseful all these years. And it took me almost 10 years to be able to say to them, I am so sorry. But I just didn't have it in me to share. And that's what I want people to understand, that not everybody can do this. And you know what? Know yourself. And once you know yourself, you know, be the best that you can be. And ReGina, you are remarkable.
Oh, thank you.
I hope.
Can I just say thank you to my mother, my adopted mother, please, because I said my dad, and Doris Smithwick is amazing. She's still here with me. She'll be 80 years old this year. And she's the reason why I did what I did. And I just want to give her homage too, because my mommy is everything. So I just want to thank my father, Nathaniel Daniels, my birth dad, my birth mom, Patricia Ann Morton, rest in peace, of course, and those two. Them four, God said, I'm going to use these four to bring you in this world. So I have 4 parents that had to bring me in here, not just 2. So I'm special.
You are very special. Next time I want you to wear the crown when we do a show. That would be terrific.
Yes, I took my crown. Yes, I am. Just for you, I'll have one.
I appreciate that. Have a great day and continue to enjoy and love everyone around you.
Thank you.
Take care, hon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.